would think differently. Now, the first step is realizing that different kinds of thinking exist. I am a total visual thinker. Everything I think about is a picture, sort of like a PowerPoint slide coming up, and in the old days it was a 35mm slide, the Kodak carousel coming up. But a picture. Memories are stored as pictures. And I was shocked in my early 30s, or late 30s, when I discovered that other people did not think in pictures. That was a shock to me. Now, being a visual thinker helped me in my work with animals. Because animals live in a sensory-based world, not a word-based world. So it's obvious to me that animals could think, because I thought in pictures. And so I'd get down in the chutes to see what animals were seeing. When I first started doing this in my 20s, people thought that was totally, absolutely weird. But look at how there's a reflection on water going into this chute. A few hours later, that reflection will not be there. So the cattle may go in there easily, sometimes, other times they don't. And that reflection changes. Now I've got papers where I have a whole checklist of things to look for. Because I find that the verbal thinkers need that. Now the thing about risk is I see risk. Recently I was on a plane and I couldn't believe it when a guy put a plastic cup of water on top of his open laptop next to the keyboard when the plane is flying. One bump and bye-bye laptop. I can't believe this businessman did this. That's seeing risk. I'm a big NASA fan, and 6 years ago I had a chance to visit Cape Kennedy and watch a rocket launch. That was really super cool. And visit this launch pad. It's now had one rocket launched from it. And I found something in there that was a risk. There was a raccoon living in the launch base. And I watched him go down the steps. And they were using that base as a shop for fueling equipment. I saw things in there that I don't want a raccoon anywhere near it. Because I can think about how he might be chewing up or going to the bathroom on it or whatever. Just don't want to have that risk. That's seeing risk. Now the thing is, visual thinkers, people like me, object visualizers, see risk. In my book, Visual Thinking, there's a whole chapter in there on disasters. And one of the disasters is the Fukushima nuclear power plant. And I can't believe they made this mistake. They had no watertight doors to protect the electrical emergency cooling pump from drowning. And that pump doesn't run, you're in a whole big pile of trouble. That's seeing risk. The mathematical minds did a great job of making earthquake-proof, but they didn't see that it needed watertight doors to make it waterproof. It needed that. And mathematicians, they calculate risk. So, okay, the risk that this would happen, or the tsunami would come, it's like 1 in 1,000 years or whatever. Verbal thinkers just discuss risk. Okay, there's 3 different kinds of specialized thinking. And when you get a kid maybe with an autism label, ADHD, or some other kind of label, they tend to be on the extreme ends of these kinds of thinking, where most people are mixtures. I'm what's called an object visualizer. And I have an entire chapter in visual thinking explaining the science, that these different kinds of thinking exist. There's science behind them. So people like me, we're going to be really, really good at mechanical things, art and graphic design, photography, working with animals, and highly skilled trades. And I just found out that we have a welding school here. Glad to hear that. And art and mechanical, those 2 things go together. So let's look at the thing that's not going to get replaced by artificial intelligence. It's going to be fixing things, building things. I'm worried about the art. I'm worried about some writing stuff. When somebody's got to fix things, keep the power plant running, all kinds of stuff like that, that's not going to be done by AI. Now, the thing that I can't do is algebra. And I'm very concerned that algebra screens out a lot of object visualizers. And I think the reason why some people push algebra so much is the more mathematical types of people who think in patterns think you need algebra for logical thinking. No. Seeing the water flooding the Fukushima site, I just see it. oh, to make it worse, if there's no valves in that seawall, you're going to puddle the water against the seawall like 20 foot deep, and that's only going to guarantee to flood the basement. See, a spatial visualizer contains patterns. They are a music and math people. Music and math. And when I watched that movie about Oppenheimer, they talked about equations almost talking to you, almost like music. Well, that doesn't work for me. So here are the careers for the mathematicians: computer programming, engineering degrees, chemistry, data analytics. Then you have your verbal thinkers: writers, sales and marketing, psychologists, lawyers, teachers. These are all verbal careers. And here's the science that shows that different kinds of thinking exist. And there's a whole chapter on this. That the object visualizer, like me, who thinks in pictures, and the mathematical pattern thinker are actually opposites. You may have people that are mixtures, but you're not going to have an extreme object visualizer in the same person that's a super extreme mathematician doing top-level physics. They're opposite skills. That's what the science is showing. And then a lot of so-called normal people are mixtures when they think about it. I do a lot of talks for businesses, and I say, you need these different kinds of minds. You don't hire them just to be nice. You're going to hire them because you need them. We need these skills. Because there's stuff we're not making anymore. Because we've got a lot of people retiring out now. This shows that I've got a great big graphics card in my head for visual thinking. There's another picture of my great big circuits in there for visual thinking. So let's look at how different kinds of thinkers take in information. If I wanted to find out how a water pump works, I want to either look at the pump or look at pictures and diagrams. The verbal thinker wants to read about it. The mathematician will tend to look at both things. So this is an interesting study. In groups of students in specialized high schools design a planet, teams of students. Art students make fantastic planets with skyscrapers and polar bears and crystals and all kinds of stuff. The science students, these are the mathematicians, who just draw a round thing like this, describe the atmospheric gravity, very low graphics in it. And the humanities students, which would be the literature, the verbal students, they splotches. But the bad thing was, the verbal thinkers didn't do any planning. They didn't plan their projects. Because in verbal thinking, you have big top-down concepts. Big top-down concepts. But how do you actually implement the concept? As a bottom-up thinker, let's take a concept like an inclusive classroom, because I do a lot of talks to autism groups. And what are some of the things I need for an inclusive classroom? I'm going to tell you some stuff that's specific. LED lighting that doesn't flicker. And you can test it with a slow-motion cell phone camera. Bullying teasing has to get under control. And the other thing that will help is more written instructions, like pilot's checklists of a sequence, because I don't remember verbal sequence well. Those are three simple things you can do for an inclusive classroom. It's not some big, vague thing. See, my kind of mind, and also a mathematician, we're bottom up. It's bottom up, taking details and putting them into categories. Okay, let's look at the early inventors when the patent office first started. All the early inventors in the very beginning were object visualizers. They designed mechanical devices. Grain harvesting equipment designed by a blacksmith. Airplane designed by bicycle mechanics. That's the Wright brothers. In the very beginning, the patent office required you to submit a model of your invention, a working model of your invention. I don't think anyone's going to submit a working model of an AI, artificial intelligence program, because that's something that's mathematical. This is what I call the clever engineers. These are the people that make the clever mechanical devices. And when I was out working with all the big meatpacking plants, I worked with people that owned shops that were inventing equipment, had multiple patents. So really annoyed me when the university-trained engineer says, well, they just do manufacturing. They're doing a lot more than manufacturing. They are inventing equipment. And we've got a problem. Where are the clever engineers? There's stuff we don't make anymore. And one of them, over half of large 3D printers come out of Europe. The state-of-the-art electronic chip-making machine comes from Holland, even though it's based on research in mathematics that was done in the US. Now look at this device. Look at all the mechanical gadgets on there from my time of mine. And by the way, there's another invention coming from Japan that might make this machine obsolete, and it's from Japan. Just read about it on the plane the other day, where I read about most of this stuff. Electron microscope from Germany. All right, let's get into the meat industry, because that's the thing I know the most about. Everything you see on that floor, except the building, came from either Quebec or Holland. For pork and chicken, we're no longer making the equipment, the mechanical equipment. It's coming in from Italy and Holland and Quebec, Canada. And it goes back to our educational system, taking out shop classes for kids. Because I've worked with a whole bunch of people that probably were on the autism spectrum. The fabric for the Mars lander parachute was woven on high-tech looms built in Europe, came out of the United Kingdom. And then I realized we really had a big problem. When I visited Steve Jobs Theater, you see those structural glass walls? All the wiring is in the structural glass walls. And I'm in there screaming, we don't make it anymore. They are from Italy and Germany. That's where the glass walls come from. And the roofs from Dubai. We paid the price for taking hands-on classes out of the schools. Now, I think it's fantastic for teaching welding here. But we need to be getting kids hooked on tools and exposed to things way before community college time. I was using tools in 2nd grade, and I was taught how to use them safely. I was doing hand embroidery in 3rd grade. I had a sewing machine that actually sewed in 4th grade. I was doing all kinds of hands-on things. We got to expose kids to lots of different stuff to see what they gravitate towards. Well, how would you know you're good at math if you weren't exposed to math? You might have an autistic kid that's a math brain and nothing can be done to move ahead in math. That was done with Katherine Johnson, the famous mathematician. The hand calculated all the suborbital flights for Mercury space project. She was moved ahead in math. That was actually done right. And you got a kid who's addicted to video games, a young adult, I'll tell you how to get it on, but auto mechanics. I'm serious. I am serious. And one of the reasons why I'm going to push the trades even more is AI will not replace them. Okay, we just expanded nursing school here. Nurses are not going to get replaced with AI. Somebody who's a really good chef's not going to get replaced with AI. Yeah, the animators, they better worry. I can see that time. They better worry. I can see some basic writing stuff on, going out. There are a lot of low-level programming jobs going out. Okay, let's look at how different kinds of minds can work together. My grandfather, MIT trained engineer, very much a mathematician, worked with an autistic man to invent the autopilot for airplanes. And the autistic man came up with this crazy idea for 3 little clothes. Because everybody in aviation goes, well, you got to hook the plane's controls up to the magnetic compass. What do you think is going to happen? The magnetic compass is what the plane ended up doing. That's not very good. So these visual thinker and a mathematician mind rented a loft, tinkered and tinkered, they got it to work. But unfortunately, the stolen version was in every warplane during World War II. They needed a lawyer. And that would be a verbal thing. We really do need all the different kinds of minds. And the thing we need to be looking at is how can they work together in a complementary manner, recognizing the differences. Our educational system is screening out the object visualizers. I'm very, very concerned about this. I couldn't do algebra, I never had a test in algebra class. I was busy dodging math classes. I had to drop a physics class. I had to drop a class in biomedical engineering, even though I did a nice term paper, this would be back in the 70s, on artificial hips. I found that very interesting. But there was a mistake done on artificial hips that I would have never have done. And that was a hip that was metal on metal. And like some gunk was kind of coming from that was going into people's bodies. bad results, I wouldn't have made that mistake. I would have seen that Duncan going, we've got trouble coming here. Yes, you need mathematical minds to develop and figure out like the strength of the alloys and stuff that you use to build a hip out of. But you also need a visual thinker to go, hey, it's got gunk. We need to go back to metal on plastic. Yeah, we need both kinds of minds. And 60% of community college students need remedial math. Only 30% need remedial English. And I just found out in the other room that your president agrees with me that maybe algebra should not be a gateway for every single different profession. Now, there's some professions that don't need it. You want to be a chemist? Yes, you're going to have algebra. You want to do orbital mechanics? You will need algebra. There's a lot of stuff that I need it for. But the things I did on designing equipment, I didn't need it. Working with animals, you don't need it. Now, this airplane is owned by a man who cannot do algebra. We still know how to build a beef plant because there's one person who took a single welding class in high school, and he started building tiny little cattle handling facilities for our university, and now he's building beef plants. He has them all in his head, but he can't do algebra. I've been on that plane, super nice. That's one of Wayne's hydraulic power packs. To me, that's a thing of beauty. That runs like an entire beef processing floor. You got the pipes designed so you have nice, smooth laminar flow without turbulence. Yes, we need these kind of lines. In fact, I think people are forgetting how to build hydraulics. I just talked to a plant the other day, and they said, well, we don't like hydraulics for games. And I go, yeah, you put your power pack outside, the reservoir's going to get cold, and the fluid's going to be molasses. It's not going to work very well. Now, this is a semi-track restrainer system under construction. This is a piece of equipment I worked on developing for big beef plants. The person who built the first one of these 30 years ago, I'm almost positive was autistic. And he has a whole pile of patents. And since he's not declared, I can't give out his name, but I've looked up the patents. Now, that's complicated stuff there. You know, you're not talking about stupid kids taking a shot. You're talking complicated equipment here. Now, let's look at who builds a big food processing plant. The object visualizers do all of the mechanical devices. You know, think packaging machines, things that are strictly mechanical. Lay out the entire factory. I worked with a man back in the early 90s that had a one-semester class in computer-aided drafting. He was laying out entire beef plants. And then your degree engineer is going to do boilers and refrigeration. My kind of mind doesn't touch that. We don't understand that stuff. That is for the mathematical mind. So you need both kinds of minds to build the plant. And we got a gigantic shortage right now of electricians, mechanics, and we got to find more back doors into jobs. Oh man, let me tell you, I see back doors. I'm seeing this big Amazon warehouse right now, fancy automated one, and there's a sign on one of the construction trailers that said we're hiring. I managed to glance at the name. We got to the airport, I looked them up. There was like 8 electrician apprentice positions opening. You could have walked up to that trailer and gotten a job. Most people don't see the back door. There's a scene in the HBO movie where I walk up to the editor of the Farmer Ranchman magazine and I get his card. Because I knew if I wrote for that magazine, it would help my career. That was seeing the back door. They're everywhere. Then I walk by a construction site where there's thousands of people walk by it every day, and the superintendent's name and cell phone numbers on the door. I'm not kidding. And they'll just walk right by it. It's right there. Now, I'm not about ready to call up that cell phone number because I think my job right now at the age of 76 is I want to see the young kids that are different be successful, get into careers they're going to love, and be contributing members of society, and we need the skills. Now, let's look at collaboration on our book, Visual Thinking. I wrote the first drafts, and you can see how my kind of thinking jumps all around. So I wrote the first draft of each chapter, and Betsy, my wonderful co-author, who's totally verbal, she straightened them all out, reorganized them in ways I just go, Betsy, you're just a magician. But on the other hand, the original material Betsy wouldn't have made up or found online. Oh man, I can find stuff online. So together, we used our complementary skills. Now let's take building a building. The object visualizers, the architects, They make the building look nice. So it's not just a concrete box. And the engineers are going to make it safe. They will make the building safe. You see, you need both kinds of minds to have nice buildings. 20% of the people I've worked with, long career, working on things in meatpacking plants, owned metal fabrication companies. Then I'm hearing that, well, we don't let these special ed kids take shock because of the insurance liability. Well, I've worked with autistic people that own the shops. Yeah, special ed's building the stuff. And the ones I work with are retiring out. Multiple patents, designing and building complicated equipment, and they're not very bad at algebra. Let them take geometry. Let them take statistics or accounting or business math. I'm not suggesting just totally throwing away the math requirement. Because some of the people who can't do algebra and do geometry, do substitute geometry. Grandparents come up to me all the time, and they tell me they have autism after the kids get diagnosed. And most of those grandparents had successful careers because they learned how to work at an early age. I don't want to talk about that. Now, the diagnosis often helps that grandparent to understand problems with relationships, so that's kind of a relief. Now, the thing I want to ask you, what would happen to some of the great innovators in the past in today's educational workplace? I think they might be screened out and be less successful. Michelangelo was a dirty little 12-year-old, kind of a brat, dropped out of school at age 12, but he was exposed to great art. Every church was commissioning at the time. And he grew up with stone cutting tools. So for kids to get interested in things, they've got to get exposed to things. We need to be exposing kids at a young age to lots of different things. I was exposed to musical instruments, I couldn't figure out how to play them. Another kid's going to take off the little flute that I couldn't play. But you see, you don't know to expose kids to lots of different things to try. Then he started making some stuff, and then he was mentored and apprenticed into a studio. You see, it starts out with exposure. I got into the mechanical industry because I went to my aunt's ranch when I was 15 and got exposed to the beef industry. I came from a non-livestock background. That's exposure. So you get exposure first, then mentoring. Steve Jobs was probably on the autism spectrum, bullied in school. Einstein had no speech until age 3. He'd be in an autism program today. Where would he go today? Thomas Edison was probably autistic. He learned how to work. He was introduced to work early, selling newspapers, and then he was mentored by a telegraph operator that taught him how to use the telegraph. Elon Musk has come out on Saturday Night Live. He said he was autistic. I've thought that for years after I read the first book about him. And I really admire his engineering, but I think he should have stayed with the rockets and the cars. Should have stayed with the engineering. And you know what Walter Isaacson said about him in his new book on Elon Musk? He was not able to savor success. That's the exact words. Savor success. He had successful businesses. Why are you messing around with Twitter or X or whatever it's called now? No, he should have stuck with the engineering. And I admire his engineering. Oh, that rocket that went on his tail, that is so cool. And it's nails on to save the rocket booster and reuse it. Arts foster success. We need to keep arts in the schools. Because a Nobel Prize winner was 50% more likely to have an arts and crafts hobby compared to other scientists. What are some tips for working with the minds that are different? We need to be getting these minds that are different out into the workplace. If I was a computer, I'd be an Intel 286, small processor with a couple of warehouses full of picture memory. But you're going to have to get everything through a cell phone working on about 1.5 bars of service. So I have problems with rapid multitasking. Like McDonald's takeout, don't put them there. Let's avoid the rapid multitasking. Also, things that involve a sequence, like cleaning the ice cream machine at McDonald's. Let me make a pilot's checklist. Take apart steps, cleaning steps, reassembly steps. That would save a lot of jobs because I have a very, very poor working memory. Long strips of verbal instruction don't work. Also, too many parents are like babying their kids. They're not learning shopping. They're not learning life skills. And if you're working with these people out in the field, vague instructions don't work. Don't say to them, you're not a team player. Then you need to tell them when you call the gym a jerk in a project meeting, it's not okay, you're going to have to apologize. Tell them what they should do. What's the ultimate goal of education? Where's a student 10 years after graduation? I was doing my first big design project. And one of the things that motivated me to do them is everybody thought it was stupid and I wanted to prove the world was not stupid. And this drawing I did back in 1978. I remember when I did that drawing, it was one of the Dip That projects, and they showed the movie, the HBO movie. And the HBO movie, Temple Grandin, shows how I visually think, and it shows recreations of my actual project. And when I drew that drawing, I couldn't believe I had drawn it. Kind of went, I guess a stupid person couldn't draw this. And that's the drawing I sent to Cargill. And I designed all the stockyards and the center track restrainer system for every Cargill beef plant in North America. I think that's doing good for somebody that they thought was mentally retarded but stupid. So, what you gotta learn? What I learned was to sell my work rather than myself. An interview for me was to show off the work. And I've been texting with a musician, an autistic musician, I'm bad at remembering names, that wrote the score for an Alien movie. And the right person heard his portfolio. In fact, said to him, well, how'd you get into the confidential script? You shouldn't have gotten into the script. He says, I didn't get into the script. I just wrote it. You see, the right person heard the portfolio. You see, you've got a skill you can show off, you can show the portfolio. These are some of the pictures I put into the packet I sent to the head of Cargill. Show off some of my stuff. And there's a replica of one of my projects they built for the movie. Working replicas. Boy, I love that. Then I showed off my brochure. That's another thing. We're going to just talk a little bit right now about things we can do to help some of these kids that are different. First of all, a lot of these kids are not getting enough exercise. I do 120 old lady push-ups every night in the hotel room. I despise every one of them. The house can sleep. A lot of these kids are not getting enough exercise. All right, let's look at work experience. One of the things we need to do with kids that are different is have a slow transition from the world of school to the world of work. Just a couple of months ago, I heard a sad story of an autistic lady, magna cum laude, graduated, failed in the workplace. She had never learned how to do a task on a schedule for somebody outside the family. I'm also appalled at the amount of 16-year-olds that have never gone shopping by themselves. This is stuff I was doing at 7. Mother got me a little sewing job when I was 13, and I took apart presses and hand hemmed them. A lady worked out her ass. 15 years of age, I was cleaning horse stalls. And I was proud of the fact that I ran the school's horse barn. Then I did roofing, that was probably illegal, but it was a bunch of fun. And then I had a little sign painting business. And one of the things I had to learn is to make a sign that somebody else would want. And my first paid sign was for a hair salon. So I put the bright shampoo lady on. I didn't know about copyright infringement, trademark infringement. And then when I was in college, I had internships where I was learning working skills long before I graduated from college. Let's find back doors into jobs. I already talked about the trailer. I'm seeing it right now, and it has green sparkle lights. I don't know why a construction trailer has green sparkle lights, but this one does. And I'm seeing it right now. And I was almost crying as I drove by it and going, this is the back door. The sign is gone now. You see, the back door doesn't stay open that long. The trailer's still there, but the sign about hiring is gone. And there's going to be lots of stuff inside that warehouse for my kind of buying to work on. Lots and lots of stuff. Back doors into jobs. Half of all good jobs are back door. Now let's look at stuff that was done with me as a child, that was done in our generation. Social skills were taught in a much more structured way in the 50s. I was 7 and 8 years old. Kids had to dress up in good clothes and be little hostesses and hosts at family parties. You had to shake hands with the people. We weren't allowed to use their first names. And we knew their first names. We weren't allowed to use them. Good evening, Mr. Wood. Shake hands. Good evening, Mrs. Wood. selling candy for charity, shopping by myself. I got 50 cents a week for allowance, and I learned when I was 8 years old, I could buy 5 Superman comics for them, but if I wanted that 69-cent airplane, I could save for 2 weeks. I was learning that at age 6. Friends through shared interests. There's some kids get diagnosed later in life because they got no friends. Well, for me, it was horseback riding, electronics, and model rockets. These were also places where I was not fully at ease. I can't emphasize friends who shared interests. I was just talking to the parents just the other day on the phone, and I said, get your daughter out in an art class. Maybe she'll get some friends there. And then I took an ugly shed that we had on the campus, and I made it look nice. And I figured out how to put the trim on there to make the shed look nice. That's learning a skill. Do stuff that other people would want. And there I am, painting silly sign for the Arizona State Fair Carnival. So how did I end up getting that job? I showed an old sign painter a portfolio of my signs. That's showing off the work. Driving. A lot of these individuals are not learning driving. And because of the slow processor, it's going to take a whole lot longer. Let's do lots and lots of practice. Big parking lots, open fields, places where there's nothing to hit. So that the operation of the car is on muscle memory and autopilot before you touch traffic. I did 200 miles on dirt roads, my aunt's mailbox. 3 miles up, 3 miles back. 36 miles a week. And I had to learn on the standard 3 on the tree with a horrible clutch. An old green pickup. That's what I learned on. And it works all over the horse pasture when I first started. And we started in the middle of the pasture, so when it works, it didn't hit anything. Yeah, somebody the other day was trying to teach that when the car was parked and ran over a curb and messed up the bottom of the car. That's not where you start. But if I hadn't learned driving, I would not have gone into cattle industry. There's no way. You need a slow transition from the world of school to the world of work. Okay, we've got to replace some childhood paper routes. They don't exist anymore. So let's do things like walking the neighbor's dog. You walk Mr. Jones's dog. It's got to be for somebody outside the home every day. A church volunteer job you do it every week. These cost nothing to implement. I talked to a 12-year-old a couple of months ago. She's very proud of the fact she's a church coffee lady. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff that we need to be doing. Learning shopping. There's a tendency I'm seeing the parents doing everything for the kid, and they're not going anywhere. And I'm not going to be really nice about this. Before they graduate high school, let's hold down 2 real jobs in the summer. That's what they need to do. The other big problem with young mothers is you're going all the way from Einstein to somebody who can't dress themselves. And that's in some of the more severe ones, they may have problems with epilepsy. They're not going to be, might not be capable of doing a job. See, it's all got the same label. And over the years, the label keeps changing. It's not a precise diagnosis like tuberculosis. It's not precise. It can come up on. So let's look at mentors. One of them was Jim the contractor. He was starting a tiny construction business. He former Marine Corps captain. So I had no nonsense. I got along really well with former military officers. Another person who helped me was Norm Kostovitz, the superintendent of Swiftline. I didn't know he was a former military officer until he died and I read his obituary. But he seeked me out to design jobs. Now let's look at other mentors. Mentors are important. Mom taught me to read at age 8. I could not read at age 8. She taught me reading out loud with phonics. Great elementary school teachers. My high school science teacher worked with me for about 3 years. And he got me motivated to study, because now studying was a pathway to a career. Algebra I couldn't do, but history and English I just goofed off. There was no excuse for not doing history and English, those kinds of things. Now let's look at sensory issues. Some autistic people have a terrible kind of noise sensitivity. One of the ways to help with that is give the individual control of the sound. So if the child doesn't like the hairdryer, let them turn it on and off. Let them turn the vacuum cleaner on and off. Where they control it. And then that vacuum cleaner may go with a fun thing to play with. And if you wear headphones all the time, it's going to make you more sound sensitive. But have them with you. You have them with you all the time. Control. Control is the key. And then finding soft things that don't itch. Let the child pick out some clothes. Now, some individuals have visual processing problems, and this can also happen with head injuries, where they don't like escalators because they can't tell how to get on and off of them. They might see the print jiggle on the page. Some of the more severe people with autism might have image breakup, see the print jiggling. But you have a lot of people that are labeled dyslexic that see the print jiggling. It's not all dyslexics. It's only a subgroup. Well, let's get rid of the LED lights and flicker. Take pictures with your phone in slow motion. You'll find them. And then try printing the homework on different pastel papers. Like these slides are real light yellow. Also try pale light blue, gray, lavender, light greens. Real pale colors. That can sometimes work really super well. But it only works on a subgroup. You see, not all dyslexia is caused by the print jiggling. Just a subgroup. And some individuals have a horrible time screening out the background noise. Just really bad. They might need some breaks. But the thing is, that autistic person can be one of your best employees. That's why we need to be hiring. This is a method where you stimulate two senses at the same time, and it can be helpful on desensitizing. So let's get into the individuals that are nonverbal. Some of these nonverbals can learn to type independently. And if you have an older child or adult who's nonverbal, you need to screenshot this slide right now and get the books that are on this slide. Not my books. They're books written by individuals who type completely independently. And they talk about scrambled vision, problems with controlling movement. Now, let's get back to slow processor state. I have problems with rapid conversation, like fast chit-chat social conversation I can't follow up, rapid multitasking, rapidly responding to a question, remembering long strings of verbal instruction, and I also have problems with interrupting conversations. I just can't tell where to break into the conversation. My processing speed is slow. Attention shifting slowness takes me much longer to shift back and forth between two different things. And this attention shifting slowness doesn't have any effect on my work on designing. Everything there is done on long-term memory. Now look at how many times watching this movie, the so-called normal person goes back and forth between the eyes. The autistic's looking at the math, trying to figure out what's being said. Working with the little kids, and maybe we'll end on this slide. I'm not supposed to take questions, but I'm going to walk down here in front and take some questions because I don't always mind my minders. Now let's say you got little kids. Slow down when you talk. When people talk too fast, you went into gibberish. Always encourage the child to use his words. And that kid is like a phone with a poor service. It takes time for them to download the word. Teachable moments. That's a 50s method. So if I stirred my finger around in the mashed potatoes, Mother would say, use the fork. She'd give the instruction instead of saying no. The other thing we need to be doing is teaching kids how to wait and take turns at games. That was a very important part of my therapy when I was 4 years old. Wait and take turns at games. That's going to help with a lot of impulsive behavior when they grow up. Teaching the turntable. Okay, we got to wait in line at the grocery store. You can't just push and shove up to the front. You have to wait in line. You have to wait your turn. That is something that's really important. Well, I'm going to walk down here and take a question off the audience. They said no Q&A. That made me decide that we would want to do some Q&A. Let's just get somebody. There's a question. I'm going to pick somebody. Somebody better put the hand up right now. We've got a floor. Great. Oh, I've got to pick somebody. Okay. Over there. Okay, great.
First, thank you for everything that you're sharing. We We do have a grandson who is autistic and nonverbal.
And how old?
7.
Okay, well, I always have to know how old. Because if they're like 3 or 2 or 4 or 5, I have a standard, which I just gave, standard early intervention talk.
So we do try to guide him, but I think he is more visual. He's very interested in, what a lot of kids are interested in, TV.
A lot of kids are, he's 7, but no speech at all.
He very, very, very talented.
You might want to start teaching him how to type on an iPad or on another tablet. And the reason for using the tablet instead of the desktop or the laptop is when that virtual keyboard comes up, that print appears right along the top of the keyboard. So there's no attention shift. They cannot make the attention shift. Now, if you only have a desktop, put the keyboard on a box. Put it right up high by the top of the monitor. So that print will appear, and then you've got to make sure you have a monitor that has high enough refresh rate so it doesn't flicker. And you test that, you pull this thingy out, and put it on regular slow motion video. If the monitor is bad, it will flicker on that video. Thank you. Those are things that you can do. And what's happening with some of the nonverbals is the typing works well. You can also get communication devices where they can point and they'll talk. You can do that. But I always like to have the low-income alternative. Old tablets can always be found. They all only need Word on them, or the text messaging has to be. You don't send. You write it and then you back out. Okay?
It seems like the knowledge of autism, Asperger's, some of those concepts was not really known to most people until the 90s. And that seems to be when knowledge of things came into being. A lot of the children that have autism are adults now. How do you get intervention in an adult so they can gradually become more aware of
Well, let's just start out. When I was a kid, I was born in 47. One neurologist originally diagnosed me as minimally brain damage. She didn't know what autism was. Then the autism came in later. I had no epilepsy. You see, then in the 80s, this is where they keep changing the diagnosis. See, this is not precise. In the 80s, a kid had to have speech delay to have autism. Then the Asperger's was early 90s, that's socially awkward, no speech delay. Then in 2013, he merged everything together. So now you have this gigantic spectrum going from the smartest Silicon Valley executive to somebody who never learns to talk and they have epilepsy on top of it and they have mobility issues. You see, then from figuring out what to do, you've got a very different situation.
Can I ask a follow-on question? What resources are there for adults that have some of these challenges?
Well, that's too vague. That's kind of, I have to know, is this a fully verbal adult that's playing video games in the basement, or is this somebody who's nonverbal? You see, the thing is, the spectrum's so big that the person has to describe it more accurately before I can give you advice.
It's a verbal adult that basically doesn't have social skills.
Well, you can convert. It's never too late to start. And I've got some books I'm going to recommend right now. And one of them is a book that is Sean Barron, The Unwritten Social Rules. And the other book is Different Not Less, which is 18 people diagnosed later in life, where they found on their relationships that was a real relief. But they all had jobs. And it's never too late to know. There's five or six autistic adults have been gotten off of video games and staying in their home when car mechanics was introduced. You see, because the video game addiction and mechanics go together. And there's a group of people in Denver called TACT that are teaching autistic adults to fix cars, and they have contracts with 2 car dealerships. Mechanics, they're producing, they're going out the door like that, they instantly get hired. That's the kind of stuff I like to hear about. So I've got to find out what exactly the person's problem is. Social skills have to be taught. like almost being in play. You have to learn it, like the way I was taught in the 50s. You shake hands with people, you greet people. But the problems I have in some of these heavy social group talking situations, that chit-chat goes so fast, I cannot follow it. So I prefer, like the conversation that this morning we talked about cleaning, meatpacking plant equipment, and safety. That was a 2-hour conversation in the breakfast room at the Holiday Inn Express. I had a great time. I sat next to a guy who was installing big electric towers, so we had a great time talking about those. That's the kind of stuff I find interesting. Whereas, first of all, the fast chit-chat conversation, I can't even follow it. It goes by so fast. So we have to look, I have to have more information in order to give you advice on what to do about this person. If he's a recluse in his drama, I'd like to get him involved with activities outside the house that are in the interest area. That would be a basic thing I can say. Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more question, and then I think we're supposed to, remember, 11:30 we're supposed to wrap it up.
I've got one.
Okay, then
Okay, I'm over here.
I can't tell which way to sound.
Short, I know.
All right.
How do conditions like that affect your inner eye, like maladaptive daydreaming, factor into the
Well, that's a nice big label of nonsense. This is fun. I mean, you've got more labels than you've got brain systems. And what people don't realize about me, I worked in mechanical plant construction on my PhD is in neuroscience. Yeah, so I've got, you know something about the brain here? I don't even use that as a diagnosis. I think that's ridiculous. Because I did lots and lots of daydreaming, and that's how I would invent equipment. I would just, and I would tend to get the good design ideas when the brain's kind of idling, in the shower, driving on an empty stretch of highway, walking through the airport on a moving sidewalk. You know, that's called a default network in the brain. When the brain's idling, that's when the ideas will come to me. We've got a lady with a pink dress down there. I'll try it again. Okay, all right.
Hi, so I don't necessarily have a question, but I work with children who have autism, and I just want to thank you for your books because it's truly helped me help them.
That makes my day. Thank you so much. But you asked me what motivates you now at age 76. Just what you told me. Is what I've tried to do in my books is put very practical stuff in there that people can do. Okay, we get lady in the pink dress, and then it'll be time to, I'll give you time to write it up. Oh, you want me to sign it? Would you please sign it? All right. All right, let me try it again.
Well, they just leave her alone.
Okay, the question was, what do I think about neurologists getting involved in autism diagnosis? If you have any sign of epileptic type activity where the kid just kind of freezes and stares, that's a sign they might have epilepsy. See, some of the speech delay, you can also get epilepsy things that can be treated with epilepsy drugs. Now, with me, being in 1949, I actually went to top neurologist at Boston Children's Hospital in 1949. Oh, thank you. Oh, we got candy there. All right, that's something I like. And she kind of said, well, she's an odd little girl, and referred me to a speech therapy clinic that 2 teachers taught out of their home. And they did all the right things I just talked about. She also checked me for deafness, because if that child's not talking, you've got to rule out deafness. You've got to rule out something wrong with the throat that might be surgically correctable. And she also tested me for epilepsy. Because if you don't have any sign of epilepsy in a very young child, that usually helps the prognosis. But there's some kids where you get staring spells, and the problem with some of the epilepsy diagnosis is that to diagnose it correctly, you've got to do a sleeping EEG with all wires on the head with no sedatives. Child has sedatives makes a test. That's going to be difficult. No, there is a place for a neurologist. And that was done with me. Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up. And